Portland from Los Angeles, 1993. I wanted a quieter, simpler life. Then I got up here and met Tim Ellis. That was the end of that. I met him for the first time outside the old White Horse studio building. He came walking toward me kind of fast, this guy, built like a pit bull, his fists and jaw clenched. He had a long ponytail and a skullet. I thought, Jesus Christ, who's this guy? He seemed like one of those intense alpha males I tended to not get along with too well. To balance that out, he told me later his first impression of me was that I was another poser shithead from LA. Regardless of that first meeting, we ended up starting an acoustic duo together, Tim and Jim, and the next 20 plus years were a mad blur of gigs, insanity, booze, and howling laughter. We played 3,024 shows together. Like a lot of you, I'm lucky I bumped into Tim. Speaking of luck, Tim always got the good parking spots, the best seats, he always found money on the ground, and he went to London twice and saw the Queen both times. Just lucky, I guess. He had that weird natural leader thing. If you walked into a room where there were 50 people, including Tim, your eyes would naturally gravitate toward him and you'd go, oh, I guess that guy's in charge. That's why referring to Tim as a sideman is actually kind of funny, because even though he was a brilliant one, if you were ever lucky enough to have played with him, you know it didn't matter whose name was up on the sign outside. There was absolutely no doubt as to who was leading the band on stage. When you played with Tim, you watched Tim. He set the pace, cued everybody, and kept the morale and energy up. And your job was to pay attention and be ready for left turns. He didn't suffer fools very well, musical or otherwise. With musicians, Tim didn't know it was guilty till proven innocent. He just assumed when he met you, you sucked. And it was up to you to crawl your way out of that hole and get it together. His work ethic was from some other bizarre planet. Mornings he'd teach guitar and advanced music classes at Portland Adventist Academy. In the afternoon he'd do a session or two somewhere, then pack up the car and go play a show at night. After that he'd often come back to the studio and work on music for film or TV till all hours. Those were the light days. He's the hardest working man I've ever met and the greatest musician I've ever known or heard, hands down. If you knew Tim, and most of you did, you miss him terribly. You miss the wild-eyed, infectious enthusiasm that filled the room when he walked in and started talking. And he loved to talk. Lots on his mind, lots of opinions, stories, jokes. Over the years, I must have heard that stupid leprechaun joke of his 100 times. That's right. Tim lived his life exactly the way he wanted to live it. And when he was diagnosed, he chose to spend his remaining time the same way. Surrounded by friends, fellow musicians, his 6 incredible kids, and the amazing Susan, his one true love. A life lived like that, we should all be so lucky. And what I'd give to hear that stupid leprechaun joke again. So with that, it's my great honor to induct into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame. The mysterious one, the bold and beautiful one, the mountain, the eternal thunder, the good shepherd, father, husband, teacher, the Taj Mahal, the ethereal secret weapon, the ultimate badass. My friend, Tim Ellis.
A whole new version of my father I never knew. I actually have never heard this leprechaun joke. And my mom said it's her least favorite joke she's ever heard. It is a tremendous honor to be here tonight to recognize the great achievements of my father, Tim Ellis. My name is Tiffany Ellis, and I am the second of his 6 children. We were all so wonderful, they just kept having more. This, of course, many of you know her, is my wonderful mother and his wife, Susan Ellis. And we humbly accept this honor, his induction into the Oregon Music Hall of Fame, on behalf of our family. So Kristen and Jennifer, two of my sisters, are here tonight, so if you see anyone who kind of looks like my dad, we're probably related. My father is being recognized for his impact on the Portland music community as a sideman. Anyone who has had the pleasure to work with him or hear him play knows he was an extraordinary kind of sideman, one who focused on the music and the band as a collective whole. He held himself to a high standard of excellence, and by doing so made everyone around him achieve more and achieve better. He was so many things in his lifetime: educator, producer, composer, band leader, recording studio owner, and also he was a guitarist. But more importantly to us, he was a devoted husband and father. Tim Ellis was very much a front man in our family. We grew up surrounded by music. In 1984, a 28-year-old Tim Ellis moved up from Los Angeles with his wife and 3 young daughters, and also his band Buster. So, who remembers Buster? Okay. Well, we all lived together in the same house. So imagine being 28 years old with 3 daughters and a wife, and a drummer and a singer. So my first memories were actually growing up surrounded by music. My sister Kristen and I would squeal around the living room while they were trying to rehearse before a gig later that night. And it's easy to take for granted being surrounded by music. But growing up in this creative environment and paired with the hard work and tenacity that my dad always had was really woven into the fabric of our family and continues to inspire us today. So, we lost my dad to a short but aggressive fight with cancer earlier this year. And it happened really fast, and it happened way too soon. But my brother Thomas reminded me that my dad has never done anything any slower than 100 miles an hour. So he spent his last days at home surrounded by friends and family and music. And I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of my family to thank you. Thank the Portland music community, thank the Portland business community, thank our friends for all of your support during that time. It was challenging and extraordinary. My dad was surrounded by music and he was surrounded by love. So to you, I thank you. So I know this is a long show, so I'm gonna cut this short. I could talk about my dad forever. But when I was 6 years old, we had this school assignment and it said, "My hero is," and then you fill in the blanks. So when I was 6, I drew a picture of my dad. My hero is my dad. And I drew his big curly afro, which I inherited. And his little tail, do you remember the rat tail of the early 90s? Yeah, I drew that in. And he had these OP shorts that he wore. It didn't matter what season, he was always wearing those OP shorts. So my hero is my dad. And that sentiment is as true now as it was then. So thank you very much on behalf of the Ellis family for this honor for Tim Ellis.
Tim Ellis. I remember the first time I saw Fernando.